Hi everybody. So this month's book club pick was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It's by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So what did you all think of Evelyn Hugo?
I really enjoyed it. Like really enjoyed it. It was one of those books where I didn't really want to put it down. I started reading it on the train down to London, and it's only a 2 hour train from here in Liverpool, but like it just felt like 5 minutes because I got so sucked into the book. It was the way it was written, it was just so like I wanted more and more and more. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think I agree with Liam on that. It's one of those, isn't it? Like when I was reading it, it's almost like you know something kind of not quite right is going on. I think all the way through. When she obviously Evelyn, this sort of glamorous Hollywood actress, invites this journalist Monique to tell her life story, basically. But we never know why, and I think that kind of mystery is always there. I always felt almost like a little bit uncomfortable sometimes reading through the story because you're almost kind of expecting some twist or some kind of huge revelation, and it almost kind of teases you through the story, I think. And yeah, I agree with Liam. I think I just picked it up, and as I went through the chapters, it just seemed to go and flow really easily. So yeah, really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I read it over a year ago now, and it's one of those books that like it stays with you for a long time. Like I could not stop thinking about it. Like just everything about it, in my opinion, well, almost everything was perfect. Like it's just one of those books that grabs you, takes you on a journey. I don't even know like how you would describe the genre of this type of book. Like it's
Yeah,
just
it,
amazing. Like I just loved it.
yeah, it's a weird sort of like fictional biopic, but
Yeah,
like the way that it's written, sort of jumping between the past and the present, and the narrative points of view as well. Because obviously in the present we have Monique as the narrator, sort of describing what's going on in her world and her meetings with Evelyn. And then as we jump back to the past to explore Evelyn's life, Evelyn takes hold of that narration. So it's like you say, it's quite hard sort of thing to describe the genre and the style of it, but the way that it's all knitted together, it's really interesting.
yeah. And I guess as well, like the way that the newspaper and blog posts and stuff like that sort of play a part in it too. So what do you think that that sort of brought to the overall book? Did you like the fact that the newspaper cuttings and stuff were in there? And did that kind of like change your perception of Evelyn at all?
Yeah, that was really interesting part of it. It does play obviously a big role. Like Monique is a journalist herself, isn't she? For a magazine, and we got those kind of tabloidy kind of style newspapers throughout, sort of providing that commentary, aren't they, of what goes on in her life. Sometimes they actually tell the story as well, don't they? There's parts where Evelyn kind of hints that she something might happen, like she might marry this person, and then we only really find out about it when we see it in that newspaper. So I think that says quite interesting things about like where you get your information from sometimes and where you learn about things. But I think she obviously uses the press to, or tries to use the press to her advantage. I think throughout the book, she used it to kind of boost her fame and become this kind of really super famous star that everyone knew about and get film roles. But often they were reporting things about her which she didn't want to know. And I don't know, are we're allowed to talk about spoilers in this, just in case anyone's seen it?
Yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, that's right to check. Um, but yeah, obviously her, I guess, big secret is her love for Celia St. James, right? And that's the thing she kind of wants to keep out of the press for so long. And all the way through, it almost felt to me like they were kind of missing that, like she was almost, she started hiding it less throughout the book as it goes along. And they almost kind of missed that, and she played it really well. So yeah, that was really interesting to see, but also see how critical she was sometimes of the press.
I think with the press, like the newspaper clippings from the past that are interspersed within Evelyn's side of the story, it sort of like puts into perspective why she's making the decisions that she's making. So she's a very flawed character. There's no doubt that she's an anti-hero in the book, and she openly says several times, I've done terrible things, but I would do them again. But sort of seeing that the way that the world perceived her kind of puts into perspective why she had to do the things that she did, and kind of makes you understand her a bit more as a human. So I think they were quite clever in that respect, that they did humanize her and make her more relatable. She wasn't just this person that was making these horrible decisions for the sake of making these horrible decisions. There was sort of rhyme to her reason, which they show.
Yeah, and like Declan said, I think the newspaper cuttings and stuff sort of made you realize how much the media can affect and influence the way that you think. Because there was one cutting in particular that I remember, and it was talking about how her green dress was like dated and she looked really shoddy and like past it. And I remember thinking, like, it just kind of show you how, even though you're reading her narrative, and well, I assume like we all liked Evelyn as a character, it sort of does make you, it makes you doubt whether you actually do like her when you read the stuff from the media, and it sort of calls into question whether everything you've thought about her is a lie, which I guess does show how powerful the media influence can be.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, like with them, obviously they have the blog posts in the present time when Monique is the narrator, but it just goes to show, like, even in our reality, that same influence that the media has over people and how we perceive celebrity and things, it's quite an interesting sort of comment on social reality that the book's throwing out there.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody's a person at the end of the day. You don't know these celebrities that you're so quick to judge. You don't know their whole backstory. You don't know what they've been through.
Yeah,
and the
you're just seeing like this much of their life, and it's being spun in the way that people want you to see it.
Exactly. So who was everybody's favorite character?
Oh, this is a really hard question.
I know. I have like 3.
Yeah, I don't think I could narrow it down to one.
Harry was great. He was brilliant. Harry Cameron. Obviously her like sort of like, I guess best. I don't know. I was gonna say best friend, but he was more than that, wasn't he? Really. He was. You know, they were, I guess, in love in a way. Maybe not in a kind of passionate way, but I think almost like a kind of. I don't know. They loved each other as people, as friends. And he was really good to her, wasn't he, all the way through? He helped her career a lot. You know, they had a child together, and you know, they had a family together. They raised that. I think she said at one point, didn't she, when she was talking about Harry, that it was almost like the ideal husband for her, but she just never had that kind of maybe passion for him that she did for Celia and maybe some of her other husbands, which was quite interesting. But it kind of changed a bit when Harry obviously passed away at the end. Again, sorry, another spoiler if anyone hasn't read it. But yeah, I'm Mr. Spoiler today.
Just dropping left, right, and centre.
I know, yeah. But it did, for me, it did change it at the end. Like, I was like, yeah, Harry's cracking. He seems like a top bloke. And then as it got towards the end, when you hear about how he died, you know, they smelt the bourbon on him when they found him. It was a huge thing, and it made me think, wow, that's a really different guy. On the other hand, though, I did feel sorry for him as well, because he was hiding a lot of his life. He just had to, because of the, you know, the prejudices of the time, how the press would have reported it. So I did really understand why he did that. But when you think that, you know, it cost another life, which I'm sure we'll get onto soon, you know, it's a big part of the book.
Yeah, I think Harry would definitely come into one of my top 3 as well. And as you say, that unconditional love that existed between him and Evelyn, like it wasn't romantic in any way, but it was just, they just knew each other inside and out. Like, they had this complete understanding of one another, and they were always there for each other. And I think it was really nice to sort of see that relationship progress throughout the book, from her storming into his office at the start of her career and demanding the big parts. Oh, we have another participant that's going to join us, so I'll just let them in. Oh, here we go. Hello.
Oh, hello there.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm Dr. Shaw. I'm so sorry for being late.
Not at all.
We're
Just talking about who is our favourite character in the book, just to get you up to speed. So we were just sort of going through who sort of stuck out most to us.
Yes, Evelyn Hugo, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
I saw that. Thank you.
Declan just sort of said that Harry was one of his favourite characters. We all sort of were struggling to decide who was the best standout character. Was there anybody that sort of stood out particularly for you?
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Carry on, please.
No worries. So yeah, I think obviously Evelyn is one of the standout characters. Like there's no way that you couldn't love Evelyn, even though she is such a destructive, horrible person.
I'm afraid I don't have much time to read. Well, I didn't have time when I was working, and I'm still, although I do charity and voluntary work, and you can probably see some of my awards behind me there. I've had a few of them, including MBE from the Queen, Her Majesty.
Wow.
So, yeah, but I'm sorry, I'm terrible. When I was young, you know, when I was in my GCSE, we called it high school in India, which is where I was at the time. I read all of Charles Dickens and Thomas Hardy and all of them. And this was my favorite character at that time. I'm sure you all wouldn't know those books because I'm possibly older than your grandmother, I think.
I'm actually a big Hardy fan. I did a module in university on Thomas Hardy's books. So yeah, he's got some it's quite a good comparison, that actually, in terms of the strong female characters that are in Evelyn Hugo. You've got yeah, absolutely. And you've got people like Bathsheba Everdeen, who sort of, again, they're that female character who's fighting for the top of the podium. And that sort of ruthlessness of willing to do whatever that they want in order to get to where they want to be. And I think that's quite a nice comparison, looking back over strong female characters in history, between Evelyn here and, you know, the likes of Bathsheba. I think Bathsheba's from Return of the Natives. No, Far from the Madding Crowd. But yeah,
Far from the Madding Crowd, very safe. Well, you know, I was born in the British times, so English was my first language. And therefore, we were only reading. I keep saying we because my sister and I were more or less just a year apart. We were very close. And she was the vivid reader. I wasn't as much because I was planning to do science and medicine, and that was much harder studies than just doing something else. So she did go on to do her master's and PhD and all, but I had went on to do medicine, and that's when the books went out to the window. I was just...
well, now's your chance to get back into them.
Well, no, not really. I'm still reading. You ask me anything about COVID-19 and I will tell you. I can't give up reading medicine things, you know, medical things, I'm afraid. Anyway, please carry on. I don't want us to be chatting because I could be chatting all day. You do know that I've written a book as well. I mean, it's an autobiography.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. Did you not know?
I didn't know. So, Danielle, did you have another question for us?
Before we move on, I just wanted to say, I think, despite what you said before, Liam, about Evelyn Hugo being like an anti-hero type character, I think that is what draws us into her so much, because she almost behaves in the era where it's originally set. I think to sort of exhibit more masculine qualities was really rare in women. They were more subservient to men. They were sort of, you know, didn't sort of want to climb the, you know, the ladder of success, I suppose. So I think I really admired the fact that she almost seemed to pave the way for other people. And she even said, like, if she makes the path easier for just one person, then all her decisions have been worth it. And I really thought that was iconic. I enjoyed that. So yeah. So speaking of Evelyn's words of wisdom, throughout the recounting of her life, she says things such as, be wary of men with something to prove, never let anybody make you feel ordinary, and it's okay to grovel for something that you really want. What was your favourite piece of advice from Evelyn?
That's tough.
Or like something she did that you were like, that, you know, that was a good decision or that benefited her in some way.
I just think the way that her mind worked was just fascinating all the way through. Like, she wasn't afraid to get down and dirty to get where she wanted to be. And all the way through, she sort of said she had no regrets in the things she did. She was she didn't feel sorry for the things that she did because she did them for a reason. So I think sort of like her decision-making process, she was always at the heart of everything that she did. But that sort of, even though it remained, it kind of became more about other people as the book went on. She sort of said, you know, at the beginning she was getting out of her life, she was building a new life for herself, but then as she started to make these new relationships with Celia, with Harry, with her daughter, her decision making became more about protecting them than protecting herself. But it was always this sort of fierce loyalty that drove her decisions, and I just think it kind of made her quite an admirable character, in that, you know, she would protect those that she loved, and she would protect herself, and she would sort of go out and she'd do anything that she needed to do in order to have that done.
Yeah, I think just to build on that a little bit, I really think it's like interesting in the book how you see Evelyn she's so different at the beginning as she is at the start. Like at the start, she's very much kind of like trying to break into that industry, and she'll almost do anything to get that fame that she wants. It's kind of one of the big reasons she marries her husband Don Adler, wasn't it? Was that she wanted the kind of fame that he kind of came with as a power couple, got into lots of roles. But I really like the bit of advice, I guess not advice, but maybe mentality she had at the end, when she almost stopped caring about what people thought and felt about her. Like all the way through the book, she was almost like, it was almost at the level of paranoia. I felt that like she was so concerned with everything she does in public, everything that she's seen, even like the cars parked outside her house, she had to think about. And then as it got towards the end, and especially when she had her daughter Connor, she just really stopped caring about all that and started caring more about, I guess, the things that really mattered to her and that were really important to her. And she just wanted to show that and not be afraid. And I think that's maybe something that everyone can kind of, you know, maybe reflect on and think, yeah, maybe sometimes what people think of us, it doesn't really matter, you know, just being who we are and just being comfortable with that is an amazing thing, even today.
Yeah. Speaking about her relationships with people, what did you think about her love life? Obviously, she did use it to her advantage sometimes, didn't she? Sometimes she was thinking with her head rather than her heart, especially when she married like Mick Reaver. She just kind of wanted the press to kind of think of her in a different way, like to lay off her a little bit. So like, what did you think about the way that I guess she treated people as well?
Again, it's one of those where, you know, looking at it from an outside perspective, if you just had those facts laid out in front of you, like she married this person for this reason, and, you know, it wasn't the reason that you'd expect for someone to get married, it is quite a despicable way to perceive her. But again, when you look at those motivations behind her, like I can't remember the name of the husband, which she ran off to Vegas with him. Was that Mick Reaver that you just mentioned, or was that one before?
It was the one. Yeah, I think it was the one that she married.
Yeah,
like in quick ceremony.
Yeah, and she slept with him and then had the marriage annulled, but she'd done that to hide what was going on between her and Celia. So again, it's that kind of like she used people in a horrible way, but her motivations behind it were kind of, you understood, and you know, you kind of sympathize with why she was doing these things and why she was willing to hurt these people. And I think that kind of made me like her a bit more. Because at the end of the day, none of her well, barring maybe the last two husbands, the first five, none of them were particularly good people.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, I think she did what she had to do at the time, and like you can't really judge her for that and judge her for the decision she made, because it just shows you how bad things were at, at that time for people that were LGBTQ plus. Like, it was almost worth putting herself at risk of these men, I guess, rather than just, to sort of come out and be her true self. She felt like she had to sort of suppress her identity. And that's why I think her character, like, progression towards the end is so good, because like Declan said before, she's just like, I am like who I am, and that's just the way that it is. And I think, yeah, I can't really fault her. I can understand why she made all those different decisions, even though on a surface level they seem, like you said, Liam, despicable. Like,
yeah, she's very much a victim of her own circumstance in a lot of ways, and the time period that she was living in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was interesting, like what you said, Liam, like, she often, like, I guess, hurt the men that she was kind of married to, but she was also, like, I guess, really hurt herself with a lot of those marriages. Like, Dom was an abuser. She was, I guess, emotionally used, and some husbands then used her for fame, like she had with Don when she was a bit older. So it kind of came back and made her suffer a little bit as well. I think I did really like her as a character all the way through, but then right at the end, when we find out obviously about her connection to Monique and her father, that's when it really changed for me. And I guess it's one of the great things about this book was that when it gives you that emotional feeling, and when I found out how that happened, it was such a strong response. I felt really angry and upset about it. So yeah, I won't go into it too much detail because maybe we're going to talk about it in a minute. But yeah, that moment of the book really changed it for me and really made me to start to sort of dislike her really.
Yeah, I think in terms of like what you said about the husband sort of using her as an that they were as much in the game as she was. Obviously Don was beating her. There was one husband that they had an arrangement that they would just get married for the fame of it, and that they would carry on seeing their own people. The one that she ran off to Vegas after he'd had away with her, he was done. He only wanted that one thing from her. So it kind of, you understood that barrier that she put up against the world and against men in particular, because of the way she'd been treated, even from her childhood with her abusive father. There was very much a lot of reason behind the way that she treated people all the way through.
Yeah, going back to what Declan said about the ending, what did you think? Was it what you expected? Like, how would you have maybe preferred it to wrap up? Because I think even though obviously, another spoiler, Evelyn dies, I do feel like the ending is not as kind of clear cut and as neat as it could have been. I feel like that was part of the reason why it gave me like a major book hangover. I couldn't stop like thinking about it afterwards. Just like, yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, it was a big ending. I think it was a strong way to go out. And I wrote this in my review of the book, that I think the story is great all the way through, but I think the last couple of paragraphs are just so strong. It's such a strong way to end the book, in my view. And I think when I read a book, I try to not like when you read a bit of a mystery book, and I think this was a bit of a mystery book at times, because you're guessing what the connection is all the way through. But I try not to do that. I try not to overthink it, and I just kind of let it happen and just kind of react to it. And when I got to the end and found out that obviously we know Monique's father died, and then we find out that he was actually in the car with Harry Cameron when he died, and Evelyn had changed them round places, so it looked like Monique's father was the driver when actually it was Harry Cameron. And then we realized the connection between the two. And I really wasn't expecting that. I was really shocked, even though it was kind of right in front of us. I just missed that completely. And I was like, oh my God, I can't, like, I had to put the book down, but like, right, I need a glass of water, I need a cup of tea and just digest it. Do you know what I mean? It was so strong, and it made me think, oh my God, what a terrible, terrible person. So it really kind of changed it for me. But yeah, super strong way to end the book. You know, what a twist that was, I think.
See, I kind of differed a bit. I wasn't a massive fan of the ending. And I think part of it was because I'd enjoyed the rest of the books so much, and I didn't really want it to end, but I felt like the whole thing wrapped up very quickly, all the way through, since Evelyn and Monique met. Evelyn kind of was dropping these hints like, all will become clear very soon. You know, there's a reason that it's you, I will tell you. And it kind of felt to me that it got to the last few chapters and it was like, oh no, we've not revealed that. So we need to reveal that really quick. And then it kind of went through the motions very, very quickly. Whereas I'd have liked to have seen that drawn out a bit more, to see more of, you know, Monique digesting that information. And obviously we got to see a bit of what was going through her mind, and, you know, her leaving the house and making that decision whether to come back for the photo shoot the next day. But I would have liked to have explored Monique a bit more in that moment, and got to know her a bit better, as she was dealing with that internal conflict. So I as much as I liked the twist, and I again, like you say, it was right there in front of us, but I just didn't see it coming. I would have just liked to have explored it a bit more, because it did feel rushed to me, which I felt after sort of the level of detail that we'd gone into in Evelyn's life all the way through. I felt it just let it down that little bit right at the very last hurdle.
Yeah, I think it was quite good though that it did end on the article written by Monique. I thought that was quite a nice touch, and just the fact that it seemed as though, even though after everything that had happened, she still had a level of respect for Evelyn that, you know, that couldn't be diminished, even though she kind of knew now the motive of why Evelyn had asked her to write about her life. And I just think, like, the final quote about it, you know, about like talking about the husband saying, you know, they'd be much more interested in my wife. I just thought that was a brilliant ending. Like, just like, she was unapologetically herself. She had a colourful past. She didn't care. It was all part of her. It was all learning experiences. And I just thought it was very modern, I guess, you know, for her time. Like, I really like the ending. I do understand what you mean about it feeling a little bit like, oh, quick, you know, we've not mentioned this, like, get it over and done with kind of thing. And I would have liked to explore Monique more as a character, because I really thought I really liked her. But I feel like I couldn't list her in my top 3 favourite characters, because I feel like I didn't know enough about her.
Yeah, she wasn't present enough.
No, like, it was almost like she was very, like, a distant narrator, whereas Evelyn was very present in the narrative. It felt like Monique was just kind of there, but I wanted to know more about her reaction to, you know, to what Evelyn had done, like you said. But it was still a 5-star read, just for the shock factor, and I just loved all the characters in their own little way.
And I think that, Dr. Shoba, did you want to say something there? I saw you raised your hand. You're on mute, sorry.
Beg your pardon, I keep muted because I know I hear better if I'm muted from the others speaking. Well, no, I was just wondering whether the end could have been because she'd been influenced by either people that might have helped her to write it, or herself to think, well, if I make it and so subtle, people might enjoy it more. Or could it be the publishers who said, your book's becoming big and people won't read it, or something like that?
Yeah, very much so. I think maybe there was that sort of not wanting to feed the reader every single detail, kind of leave them guessing a bit. You know, was Monique right in the fact that, you know, Evelyn was left to do what she did.
I say this because with myself, I had to end my book. I just said I got the 3 children, but nothing about the children. And I was told by, the people that were helping me to do the book, company actually. And they said, well, it's better that you wrote the 2nd edition rather than made this book big, because there might be people who only know you and they only want to hear about you rather than what happened later. So that I thought would be a reason. That's it.
Well, that's an interesting point then. With what we've said about not really getting to know Monique very well, if there was sort of like a sequel that followed Monique after the events of Evelyn Hugo, do you think that would be something that people would want to read and get to know that character and explore that character a bit more? Do you think maybe that could have been a motivation in sort of keeping her sort of in the background a little bit?
I think it would be really interesting to hear more from Monique, but there would have to be more crossover, like with other characters from the story, I think, because I know that this book crosses ever so slightly with Malibu Rising, her latest release. So Mick Reaver is in Malibu Rising, like his family are the main characters. So I think she does quite like to, cross over different characters from different books. I would definitely read a book about Monique and, and her sort of reaction and how it impacted her life. And maybe, in her journalistic career, she could do something similar, to what she'd done here. But I think, I don't know what it could be, to be honest. It would have to be different enough to this to sort of be interesting, but also similar enough, because she definitely has a really distinctive writing style that's not similar to anybody else that I've ever picked up.
I think it would be quite interesting to explore, like, obviously Monique's now going to release this book, and as Evelyn pointed out from the very beginning, she's going to make millions from it. So it would be quite interesting to explore sort of how Monique goes about, dealing with the fact that she's made all this money off the back of a woman that she can't stand.
Yeah.
Sort of exploring that journey with her. I think that would be quite an interesting concept.
I wonder as well if that's... Sorry, Daniel.
No,
yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if that's like a point she's kind of making as well, that like that the writer's making, because obviously we know that Monique's story is there, and it is really interesting. I agree with you guys, and I wish I knew more about it. And her, I think, husband David, she was getting that divorce, wasn't she? And there was a lot going on there that we didn't really hear about. I wonder if that's like a point that the writer's making, that like, even though there is a really interesting story kind of going on at the side, we're so kind of just automatically drawn to that kind of Hollywood glamour and fame and the name of Evelyn Hugo. She kind of pulls us in, doesn't she, as well as Monique, and we almost kind of, put her to the side, because I guess we have to, right, the way we read the book. But yeah, maybe that's the point she's making. But yeah, I would definitely read something about Monique, because to find out what happens next would be really interesting.
Yeah, which brings me to our final question. Do you have any plans to read any other of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books?
I definitely would. I really enjoyed her writing style. And it's quite interesting to know that there are crossovers with her other books. So Malibu Rising might have to go on my reading list now. So yeah, I definitely would do. And I know that she's had a couple of other books that have been, very highly regarded and bestsellers sort of thing. So yeah, I'd like to explore more of the Taylor Jenkins Reid sort of bibliography.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I would too. I've got a long reading list, and this book club, obviously, we have more on top. But yeah, I'd love to find out more about the worlds that she makes, because, yeah, as you say, especially if the characters are linked, that's super interesting.
Yeah. See, I've read Malibu Rising, which is her latest one. I also read Daisy Jones and the Six, which is apparently like loosely based on Fleetwood Mac. So it's like told in an interview style. So that's really interesting. I've got all her other books on my bookshelf, but I've just not got round to them yet. But I did read this book called Forever Interrupted, which I think she wrote in like 2013. So before any of her, best-selling books. and it was written so well. It's very different to how she writes now, but it was written really well. But you know, when a book stays with you forever, but in a bad way, like it's so sad. Like, but I don't cry at books, like categorically, nothing makes me cry in a book. Even like the saddest of things can happen, but this book had me sobbing. Like I couldn't stop thinking about
What was it called again?
Forever Interrupted. Don't read it. Don't read that.
It'll ruin your life.
Literally, just don't buy it. But yeah, it was an amazing book, but it made me very sad for a long time. But yeah, I will get around to reading her other books because I do like love them, and I hope she releases many more because I think she has a really distinctive style of writing now, which I enjoy.
Obviously an already established writer, but also at the same time a very promising writer. Like, it's exciting to see where she's going to go, and if as you say, you know, there's already been an evolution in her writing just over the past few years, it'll be very interesting to see where she goes and takes things next.
Definitely. Hopefully with a Monique sequel.
We'll have to write to her and suggest it.
Yeah.
This is what the fans want to see.
I know, send her this article and be like, hello, please. So that's all the questions I've got. Has anybody got any concluding comments they'd like to make about this book?
Just what we've said already, you know, it's a really great book, really easy to read, really draws you into the whole narrative, and it's full of fantastic characters that you just want to, you know, delve so deeply into their psyches. You know, it's got every single element that you'd really want a book to have. And like I said before, I just wish it was that bit longer because I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, I promise I'll read it. I haven't read it though, but I've enjoyed your discussion, and it seems quite sort of close to what I thought. So I will definitely read it.
We're so glad to hear that, and it's been so nice to have you join us as well.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, you can read my book too, you know, like, and have a bit of discussion about it. I don't mind. And certainly. Okay, thank you very much.
Declan, what did you have anything else to add?
I'd just say I definitely recommend it, and I think if maybe you read the blurb or you read the plot of this book and you think it's not for me, give it a go, because that was me. I didn't think I'd be too interested in this, but I really enjoyed it. So definitely pick it up, and I'm sure many people will enjoy this book. Yeah,
it's definitely a book that you can't judge by the cover. From looking at the cover, you sort of assume that it might just be your standard sort of chick lit vibe, but it's definitely not. And like you said, Liam, the characters are also colourful, and it's almost like you know them. I felt as though they were friends that I'd had in the past. They were described in such detail. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's probably in my like top 20 books that I've ever read. Like, I really enjoyed it. So yeah.
Can I buy it from Amazon or?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon, or if you just go to any local bookshop, it's one of those books where it should be pretty much available everywhere.
I'm not allowed to go out, so it'll have to be online.
Amazon's your one then.
The NHS won't let me go out, so you know. I've just had shoulder to my surgery, and so surgery to my shoulder. What's happening to me? Yeah.
Oh. Well, it definitely sounds like it's time to get a good book. Sit back.
I will.
So I was going to say next month's pick is Shuggy Bane, one that I've not read. So I'm excited to read that. So yeah, see you all next month for another book club discussion. Thank you for coming. It's been fun.